Brilliant. Okay, should we make a start? And then if anyone joins, I'll just play catch up. Brilliant. Perfect. Okay, so welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us for our webinar on leveraging AI, how to enrich your business in Microsoft Copilot. I'm just going to give you an introduction to our speakers today. So next slide, please. So we are kindly joined by Nick Banks, who's Partner Development Manager at Ingram Micro. Nick is a Microsoft 365 and Microsoft Security Licensing Specialist. He's recently joined Ingram Micro Cloud after 3 years at Microsoft, so he comes with a wealth of experience. And also presenting today is our very own Pat Ramsden, Solutions Architect for ITRM. He's been a long-term IT consultant specialising in Microsoft cloud-based technologies and essentially helping organisations get the most benefit out of their services. Next slide, please. So just a bit of a rundown of ITRM as a company. We're proud to be an award-winning managed service provider. We were founded in 1999, which means we celebrate our 25th anniversary this year. We've got around 48 staff that are included office-based and field-based engineers. We've got around 250 managed clients provided with various IT support services, and we serve London, South East and surrounding home counties. Next slide, please. So just a bit about our visions and values. We pride ourselves on being customer service driven with honesty, integrity, authenticity, but also technical leadership, which I'm hoping you'll find from this webinar today. Next slide, please. So just a bit about our accreditations. We're a Microsoft Solutions Partner and a Microsoft Solutions Partner for Modern Work. Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus, which is very important. And just some of our other awards that we've won quite recently listed at the bottom there. And just an overview of some of our key clients. And there are obviously many, many more that we'd love to showcase, but I've only got one PowerPoint slide to fit them all on. So over to you, Nick, and I guess we'll start the presentation. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Tilly, and thanks for the opportunity to speak today to some of your customers. So yeah, I know we've done a brief introduction. So my name is Nick Banks. So I work with ITRM and I work for Ingram Micro Cloud, who are a global distributor of Microsoft Cloud solutions. So yeah, I've not recently, but I've been with Ingram now just under a year, but I previous to that worked for Microsoft for a few years on and off. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. So a little bit about the technology landscape. So we're in quite unique times at the moment in the business world. And a lot of that is down to what we call kind of digitization of businesses. So, going online, different places to sell products, that sort of thing. And kind of entire industries are changing and the economy is also shifting, right? This kind of critical technological crossroads. And also with AI, it may seem as though that this is quite a new thing, but in reality, AI has been around since the 1950s. And a chap called Alan Turing created this Turing test to evaluate a machine's ability to produce human-like responses and intelligence. So whether we're aware of it today or not, we're probably already using it more frequently than you realise. So if you use Netflix or Spotify, they both use AI to recommend TV shows and playlists and songs, as well as give you that viewing history and preferences. And you've got things like Amazon, so they use AI to promote and push content to your homepage and show you things that they think you might want to purchase. And then we've got personal assistants in your phones, as well as those speakers. So Alexa, Google Assistant, and Siri. So these all utilize AI as well. And then a really kind of old one for those slightly sort of similar age to me and older, but predictive text. We think of that as just an everyday thing that is there, but that is actually a form of deep learning for AI as well. So yeah, we use it more often than we probably realize as a solution already. And then more recently, we moved into this thing called generative AI. So this is, I love this slide because it kind of shows the impact that it's had. So it took it took mobile phones 16 years to reach 100 million users. And it took the internet less than half that, with 7 years. Apologies, 16 years for mobile phones to reach 100 million users. Internet took seven years. And then we've got Facebook, took just over 4 years to reach that 100 million barrier. And ChatGPT did that in 3 months. So the growth and the interest in this sort of technology is huge. And I'm into my studies and read a lot of things daily, but I was looking at a study today on the impact of AI, and it's predicted that global GDP could increase by almost 26% by 2030. So that's not long away. So it's only 6 years. And this is really as a result of just the take-up of AI and its impact. And it's predicted as well that 70% of companies by that same time will have adopted at least one form of AI. Some are already using AI, and some will have adopted multiple forms of AI. So it's a hot topic. Another study I read as well, which is called the Modern Work Trend Index, which you can all go and research yourself. But it stated that the AI can really help lift that burden of the mundane, repetitive tasks that we do day to day, and it's going to help us hopefully fuel some innovation, and that innovation will only create new jobs for the future. And another really, really good stat which I read, is more of a theory, but they reckon that in the next 6-7 years, 85% of the jobs haven't even been invented yet. So by 2030, there's going to be a whole new sort of jobs market in jobs. So yeah, there's big growth and innovation due. So now on to one of those forms of generative AI, and that is Microsoft 365 Copilot, which you may have heard of already. But before I kind of talk about Copilot itself for 365, it's worth mentioning there's quite a few different versions of Copilot, and you'll hear that word a lot, especially with Microsoft. It's one of those buzzwords at the moment. So you've got Copilot for Bing, you've got Copilot for security, and there's many more. So these will all provide an intelligent natural language interface to those apps. So the one we're talking about today is specifically Microsoft 365 Copilots. That's the ones that are built into your Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Outlook and Teams apps. But a kind of key piece of information is that Copilot for 365 is built on Microsoft's comprehensive approach to security and compliance and privacy. And now we've also got responsible AI as well. So it's going to inherit all your existing organizations' security, compliance, and privacy policies. And all your data is going to be protected as well within your tenancy, and it's always within your control as well. So by design, Copilot is going to respect all those specific groups and user permissions that you've got, and any content that it retrieves will be the correct content for the correct people that retrieve it. So it's only going to retrieve that content based on the users and what permission they've got access to access. So a good example of this, which you may have also heard, is you're not going to have a salesperson getting access to important HR documents and pay grades for people, as long as they're all protected, of course. And a product like Microsoft 365 Business Premium specifically, that's going to include a lot of those capabilities already. So if you've already got those licenses, they can all just be turned on at a flick of a switch. And protect your data and your people. So really, by having those kind of basic data governance policies in place, it's going to mean that Copilot is only going to surface the most relevant information. It's going to stop you from oversharing content and also that accidental leakage of data as well. So I'm going to hand over to Pat shortly, but I've got a video first to show you what it is and what it's all about.
Straight to the top, never going down, don't wait for the drop. Stand still, that's the motto, yeah. Brand new bands for the auto, oh. Foot to the ground, full throttle. Big energy for the night like lotto. Y'all talk lots, never this quiet. Life like a Seinfeld plot. Ball full of songs, all of them bombs. Something like a minefield got, boom. Get it, tickets running out quick. Bet it, never get it outbid. Said it, never had to shout it. They said I couldn't ever do it, okay, how's this? Fit a week worth of work in a minute. Machine well oiled, you know how I stay efficient. To-do list written, I do this different. Hold up, wait a minute, I ain't finished. Okay. Look, flows the same now. Paved the way to snakes and fakes are chased out. Back to back. I changed the pace now. Had to stack the cash until the bank's out. Straight to the top, never going down, don't wait for the drop.
Thanks,
Over
Nick.
to you, Pat.
Thanks, Nick. So Nick's just given us a really good intro to AI, not just in Microsoft in general, but also specifically what we're here today is the Copilot for 365 suite. So I think what we'd like to do now is just dive into the Copilot for 365 and its features that you can benefit from right now with the correct licensing. So we'll start with Copilot for 365, the Word version. So we're all, unfortunately, in the world where we're creating Word documents and content. And wouldn't it be nice if we had that personal assistant to actually help us write those and create that content and make our lives a little bit easier? I have some videos throughout this, but just to give you an overview of the Microsoft Word Copilot. So it really is, it transforms the creative process with designer integration. So unfortunately, in my role, I have to write a lot of reports and papers, and being able to describe what I want to Copilot to actually, and it will then actually bring that to life, makes my life so much easier. And I really think actually improves the content I create, because it's pulling in from such a wide array of content. Equally, it's also using the context of what you're writing about to suggest content and visuals. So if I'm writing about cybersecurity, it will actually be able to pull in relevant images and the likes to actually amplify what I'm writing about. It's not about replacing, but it's about enhancing and amplifying. Also highlighting text and asking Copilot to rewrite. This is a common theme from Copilot throughout the Microsoft suite. However, I can take a paragraph and actually ask Copilot to rewrite that for me, and it can make it a bit more casual, more business-like, or more corporate orientated, or just help tidy up and actually focus my message that I'm trying to provide within this document. And lastly, it's asking Copilot to question around the context and response. So, for example, I can feed it a document and ask it, who is the target audience? What is the summary of this document? It will then analyze that content and actually provide, it can take a 30-page report down to a few key paragraphs, pulling out the key items from that document. It's really useful. And next, I'd just like to show a quick short video of it interacting with Microsoft Word. So next slide, please, Nick.
When you've written a paragraph in shorthand, you can highlight it and click Rewrite. Copilot then offers several alternate options to choose from that are all written professionally. And it can translate wordy or complex paragraphs into digestible visualized tables. You can even use Copilot to add a column with extra data, which it can complete automatically. Copilot also makes you the expert on any document. Simply ask a question about the content, and Copilot will provide a concise response.
Perfect, thank you. Moving on, we've got the Copilot for Microsoft Excel. So I'm sure all of you here use Excel in some way, shape or form in your day-to-day life, be that some basic sums and spreadsheets, or some of you may be performing some very complex functions and need to analyze very complex data sets. So Copilot puts all of the capabilities of Excel into your fingertips. You can actually ask it to perform actions in a human language. So I commonly work with people who, whilst they use Excel, they don't necessarily know all the features and functions in Excel, but they know what they want to achieve. With that, Copilot can actually help you pull all that out in a human language. So, for example, we could take a set of data and we could actually ask Copilot in a human way to analyze this data and actually pull out the key facts that relate to the questions I'm answering. We could also ask Copilot to then visualize that data. So tables are great, but actually we want to be able to visualize that in a way we can present to others that makes sense, not just the creator. So we can actually then visualize that data into graphs and images and the likes. On top of that, we can also add what if scenarios. So quite often when I'm working in Excel, I want to change a number in location A and see what impact that has to the remainder of the data and what's impacting. Now, the joy of Copilot is we can make a change and we can then ask Copilot to highlight all the details that have changed, rather than having to hunt for those items that have changed. And finally, we can then use it to create graphs of our projected data. So we can actually then, we've built out the data set, we've analyzed it, we've performed some what ifs, and then we can actually use Copilot to turn that into projections. And I've now got a short video that will give an intro to Copilot in Excel. Thanks, Nick.
Copilot puts all the rich capabilities of Excel at your fingertips. Say you need to analyze this quarter's sales results for the monthly business review. You start by asking Copilot to analyze the data and give you 3 key trends. Within seconds, you've got what you need, but you want to drill in. You ask Copilot a follow-up question about one of the trends. Copilot creates a new sheet, giving you a sandbox to play in and helping you get a better understanding of what's happening without modifying the data in the original sheet. You ask Copilot to visualize what contributed to the decline in sales growth this period. Copilot adds a little color to make the problem jump off the page. Now you want to dig a little deeper and ask a follow-up question with a what-if scenario. Copilot not only answers your question, it creates a simple model of the scenario and even asks you if you want to learn more about what it did with a step-by-step breakdown. Finally, you can ask it to create a graph of your projected model. Copilot has turned a sea of data into clear insights and actions.
Good stuff. So now onto PowerPoint. So for me, I love how easy it's going to help us create those PowerPoint presentations, because I've been using PowerPoint for many, many years, and I've been using a thing called Designer, which you may have heard of, PowerPoint Designer, which was really good actually. It's probably, I don't know how many years old it is, but when I first started using that, it was pretty revolutionary because it started to add pictures and animations for you, and it kind of prompted you to design sort of really pretty looking slides. So this kind of takes it one step further, because rather than just animations, it's going to be able to completely generate content for you from a Word document, as an example. So you can complete a complete PowerPoint deck just from a Word document, and it's not only going to create the presentation and the animations, and it's not going to insert just pictures for you as well. It's going to also give you speaker notes, which for me is massive. So even for this webinar that we're doing today, you know, I've got some base notes, and that takes a long time to just create from scratch. But the whole idea is with Copilot, it will create those notes for you and get you, 80% of the way there, and you've just got to critique what it creates for you. So again, that's a massive time saver. And I spend a lot of time creating PowerPoint presentations for lots of different meetings and trainings and things like that, and it takes up a lot of time. So this could save me literally hours. But yeah, you can start from a real basic prompt or outline. The key thing is when you prompt it, it's being quite specific. So, create me a PowerPoint presentation in 10 slides on X topic. It's just bringing it to life, making it quite specific, and yeah, it will generate good content for you. I'm going to show you a very quick video now on what it looks like.
Everyone has had a moment when they wish that they could turn their proposal into a custom-ready presentation without having to start from scratch. Now you can. Using just your own words, Copilot can translate Word into PowerPoint. Now you have a professional-looking presentation that you can hone and polish. Let's say you want to add a slide. Give Copilot some quick instructions and it immediately generates it for you. There it goes. Copilot doesn't always get everything right, so it's important to verify you are happy with it and make any edits that are needed. So this slide is too wordy. You can ask Copilot to make it more visual, which it does effortlessly. And check this out, Copilot can even animate the slide. It gives it a professional design treatment in a single click. But it doesn't stop there. Copilot automatically generates speaker notes for all your slides. It's not only a time saver, it's helping you be a better presenter.
Brilliant stuff. So another one of my favorites. They're all my favorites, but it's definitely Outlook. So I had a day off recently, a single day off, and it took me half a day to recover because my inbox was so jam-packed with emails. And I know from going on weeks holidays, it can sometimes take days to kind of battle through it. I don't know how long you guys spend trying to battle through your inbox to see what's important, but the great thing about Copilot is you can ask it to summarize long email threads that have been going on, for the weeks that you've been on holiday potentially, and it can quickly also draft suggested replies as well for you. So, even if you've got like 300 emails, it's going to summarize those long email threads, and it's going to prioritize those really important emails and put them to the top of your inbox as well. So that's a really good time saver. Another really good thing I like about Copilot for Outlook, because it's going to help you and guide you through that process of making a nice structured email, and just basic sort of punctuation and spelling. So, you know, I often I think too quick for what my hands can type, and sometimes it doesn't make sense. But Copilot, again, it will just support you with those basic spelling and punctuation errors. And we've got a really nice demo now for Outlook, and one of the neat features which I've not spoken about yet, but yeah, it's a really good feature.
Copilot in Outlook can help you prioritize your time and stay on top of meetings. Here you've been invited to a meeting that conflicts with a meeting you're planning to attend. Clearly, you can only attend one. From the meeting invite, you can choose to RSVP with follow. Switching over to your calendar, you can see that you're now following this meeting. Once the meeting starts on Teams, the organizer will receive a notification to record the meeting because someone is following it. Now, after the meeting is done and the recording is ready, Copilot will notify you that the meeting recap is ready for you to review. You can then ask Copilot some questions about the meeting, like, summarize this meeting, or are there any action items for me? That way you can stay on top of things as if you are present during the meeting.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to hand over to Pat now, but the fact that you can not be at your desk and you can still follow that meeting, and when you come back to it, it's going to give you those notes rather than having to watch the full recording that's an hour long. You can just get a nice summary of what was important, any actions that you needed to follow up on. So that, again, that is a massive time saver. Right, I'll let you talk about Teams now, Pat.
Thanks, Nick. So I think moving on to Teams, this is possibly my personal favourite feature in Copilot. It saves me so much time and actually makes me far more effective as a person having access to this. So I guess this follows on from the previous piece where Copilot can follow and summarize a meeting you don't attend. This is heavily used I use this heavily for meetings I am attending as well. So it's actually, I can turn on a Copilot in a meeting and I can then focus on the person I'm meeting with and the content of the meeting. I don't have to worry about writing notes or being distracted by making sure I've written every action, note or point down. So we can, throughout a meeting, I can ask Copilot to actually summarize what's happened so far, if there's any actions agreed to, or if there's any actions that don't have owners yet. And then actually I can probe further and actually take information from that. So why did this question arise? Why did this action arise? As long as it was discussed during the meeting. And I can run that several times throughout the meeting. But the other aspect of that is at the end of the meeting, I can pull a full summary out and say, actually summarize this meeting, give me all the actions with all the owners, and actually take all of that out. Equally, if you're having a meeting where you're talking about approving or not approving certain functions or things, I can, for example, have a meeting with someone. We can actually be looking at a system change, for example, and I can say I approve that, and I can actually then delve through that information and say who approved this change and when, and I can look at that data historically for meetings that have already passed as well. So it's not only a now tool, it's a historic information gathering tool as well. And like I say, it really does, in my experience, make me a much more effective person in meetings, because I'm not focused on taking notes. I'm focused on the customer or the person I'm meeting with to be able to actually deliver them the best experience. And now we'll show just a quick video of Copilot for Teams.
Imagine you have an appointment that conflicts with your weekly business review. What if you could do both? With Copilot, you can opt to follow a meeting. After the meeting ends, Copilot will summarize what you missed. You'll get a notification in Teams when the recap is ready. This recap will highlight content that was shared, summarize notes, and any action items for you or others whose names were mentioned. You see that one of your customers was discussed, and you want to learn more. You can ask Copilot clarifying questions, and it provides a detailed response. It can tell you why a certain decision was made, and gives you helpful context. You can even ask Copilot what other solutions were considered, and it provides citations from the transcript so you can see where Copilot drew these conclusions. It's a huge time saver. So that was pretty cool. But the real magic of Copilot happens during a live meeting. Let's say you're in a meeting with your team. You can ask Copilot to summarize the meeting so far. You can see how it summarizes who said what points were made, and it's really capturing the spirit of the discussion. And as the meeting progresses, you can check in on where people stand. You can even ask Copilot what questions are unresolved. It's just amazing to see this happen in real time during a meeting.
Thanks, Nick. And then moving on from the Copilot for Teams is the Copilot for Microsoft 365 and the Microsoft 365 chat function. So I'd say this is quite related to the Teams function, as it's accessible via Teams, but it's taking that, all of these components we've already spoken about, actually sort of bringing them together. So it's your chat GPT, it's your personal AI assistant all in one location. So it can search through all my Teams chats, it can search through all the documents that I have access to and files I have access to. So I can, for example, ask it, when did John and I discuss this specific function, and what did we agree upon? And it can search through my emails, it can search through my Word documents or PowerPoints or Excels I have access to, even my Teams history and meetings history, and actually pull all that together for me and really work as my personal assistant to remember the things that I can't. And just the wealth of information that this provides is amazing. It can also search out for things on the internet. So if there's certain information I need access to or certain questions I want to ask, it could also work as your personal Google search, but with a bit more of a human touch than just going to Google and searching for an exact function. So in my mind, this is my second favorite function because it really brings all of these previous items together into one. So again, we've got a short video on this one. Thanks for that, Nick. And now I'm just going to hand back to Nick to just talk about some of the other benefits and features of Microsoft Copilot.
Thanks, Pat. So again, back to some studies that are out there in the wide world. So there was a recent report by the Work Trend Index again that tells us that about 64% of employees just don't have enough time and energy to do their job. I can side with this view. It's challenging, especially with all the content that follows us around, whether we're at home or in the office. And employees generally are lacking that time and energy to do their job, and they're 3.5 times more likely as well to struggle with that innovation and strategic thinking. So we're all spending far too much time, in summary, just searching for information, attending lots and lots of inefficient meetings or that are duplicated. And the amount of data and emails and chats that we get daily is expanded so much that we're kind of struggling to process it all, I would say. But one of the kind of predominant narratives I would say around AI is this notion that employees they're quite fearful that it may cost them their job, even though there is this fear that a staggering 70% of people would still choose to delegate as much work as possible to AI just to lessen their own workload. So there is a fear, but employees, they kind of know what's in it for them, and the promise of relief kind of outweighs that threat of AI. if it is a threat, which I don't think it is. But I kind of hear this term that AI won't, it won't take your job necessarily, but someone who utilizes AI potentially could. That's not kind of to put fear into you to say that you should be using AI already, but I think it's coming, and it's going to be more and more widely adopted as the years go on. So I'm just going to touch on some of these headline stats from these early adopters. So 87% of the people surveyed found themselves being more productive, and 1 in 3 of those people save 30 minutes a day, which is absolutely crazy amount of time to save. I know it would save that for me easily, but there's been some studies as well in the US on the cost and the ROI, and for an average salaried employee, they reckon as long as it saves them 30 minutes per week, then it will effectively pay for itself. So that's a pretty good ROI. And then just a last stat. So 96% of users who did use Microsoft 365 Copilot would be disappointed if they no longer had access. Now, I don't know who those 4% are, by the way. But I'm going to hand back over to Pete now, who's going to look at some of the strategic implementation kind of questions and views.
Thanks, Nick. So this is really about how we look to implement Copilot within your organisation. So there are some questions you need to ask before you start implementing it. So I want to preface this by saying Copilot is not for everyone. There are members of staff in the business who will get benefit from it, and there are some that won't. So the first thing we need to do is look at our user readiness. So it's are our users currently, do they have the correct licensing? And how many users do we need it for? So there are a selection of licenses that can or cannot work with Microsoft Copilot. It's recently been extended, and we'll talk about that shortly. But generally, you want to be on for example, a business premium or one of the Microsoft 365 E-class licenses to really get the maximum value from it, to make sure you can actually utilize all of its functions. And then user training. So how are we going to make sure that our users are actually getting the value from this product? If we're spending on a product, we want to ensure that our users are getting the value. So how are we empowering them and making sure they're educated and able to use it? Moving on, we look to our organizational profile. So the use cases. Do we have any identified use cases where we've now looked at Copilot at a high level? Actually, we've probably now just thought of 10, maybe 20 ideas of where Copilot could make us more efficient. We need to actually then start to build those use cases out to actually build that cost and value piece. And then also looking at existing use of AI. Are we already using AI with the organization? So for example, I work with some customers who perform software development, and they're already using Copilot for GitHub, for example, which again is another one of the Microsoft Copilots. There's unfortunately quite a few of them, which I know is not the most, or can be confusing, should I say. But let's look at where we're already using Copilot and how this can then interlink with these other services we're using and really get the value of them. And then where are our current cloud services? As you've seen, we can integrate with other services. However, if you're mainly using on-premises data stores and things, maybe Copilot isn't the best fit. But again, you may then have a selection of users working in different ways, which will make it effective for your organization. Moving on, it's the productivity and collaboration piece. So it's what tools are we currently using? So for example, some of you may know of Teams Premium, which adds on some extra features for Teams and does come with some AI-based enhancements. So again, you may not necessarily need a Teams Premium and a Copilot. So it's actually working out and mapping the feature requirements to the users and what they currently have. And then how are you communicating? So are you using Teams, or actually are you using something like Slack or another product? Because if you are, you may not get the most value from Copilot product, but then how do we actually? But then the next part of that is actually how do we take you on the journey to actually make sure you do get the most value from it and the maximum benefit. And then your data storage. So again, this looks back to the organization profile, but for example, on-premises data sets are not the most effective use for Copilot. And lastly, data security and governance. So as Nick mentioned earlier, Copilot is very much using the data security and governance policies you already have in place. So, for example, I can't see any HR data just because I've got Copilot, won't give me access to any of that data that I cannot access now. It will just make the data I do have access to more readily available at my fingertips. Moving on is to protecting data. So again, as I say, it uses all of your existing security controls in place. It doesn't actually change them. It just makes that data more available to you. And that's sort of the implementation piece, and then we hopefully get you up and running quickly. It's not an overnight task, but it's not a 6-month project. It's a very quick time to market product that will, if you are interested, we'll be able to get you in very quickly. Back to you, Nick.
Thanks, Pat. So now just a little bit around the licensing side of things. So as Pat said, these licenses can be turned on pretty quickly. You may have heard previously, because this was a requirement, but there was a minimum purchase amount. So you had to buy a minimum of 300 users for Copilot. And it was only available on a thing called enterprise agreements. That's like for your really large enterprise size customers. But I think it was end of February time this year, early March, they announced that they were removing that minimum user barrier, if you like. So now you can order just a single license, which is ideal for people. You know, SME customers shouldn't be discriminated against because they're not of a large size. That, you know, they can still benefit from this technology. So now you can attach Copilot for 365 to any license from Microsoft 365 Business Basic and upwards. But again, as Pat's already mentioned, we would definitely recommend that, even though it's not a prerequisite, something like Business Premium is one of the best SKUs that you can leverage just to make sure that you're protecting your users and their data. It is an add-on SKU, so you add it on to your existing Microsoft licenses, your 365 licenses. There's not like a bundle offer. There's no trials. That's quite a key thing I get asked a lot. It's because it's so new to market and the demand is so high. Microsoft cannot. They can't sell it quick enough. Really, there's lots of demand for it. But the SKUs themselves, they can be co-termed. So what I mean by co-terming is that you can add it onto an existing Microsoft subscription, which may have an anniversary date that's maybe 6 months from now. So the overall cost per user per year, because it's an annual upfront cost only at the moment, with no plans to look at a monthly cost, is I think it's 296.40, if I remember rightly. So 296.40. So if it was just for a 6-month period, it would be half that. But you know, that isn't what we want to encourage. You know, this should be a product which you take on, you know, and you utilize and get the most out of, and it should give you those benefits and those ROIs pretty quickly. There are no charity specific pricing options yet. Don't know if there isn't plans at the moment, but charities can still buy it, but it's at the full commercial cost. And then you also have a thing called Copilot Pro as well, which you may have heard of. So this is not for business users. This is just if someone off the street wanted to go and buy a license to help them in their studies or just their day-to-day life. And again, that's the price there is on the screen, but that's not kind of what we're focusing on today. But I wanted to just mention that there is another product for an individual rather than for a business. And that's pretty much it. The cost when you break it down per month is £24.70, even though you cannot buy it monthly at the moment. But that's what it would cost if it was to be a monthly product. And that's pretty much it from a licensing perspective. I don't know if I've missed anything, Pat, or anything you would want to add. I think there is some prerequisite licenses, but they've expanded the amount of licenses that you can attach it to about a month ago to almost any license, including Microsoft E3, E5, F1 as well, so frontline SKUs. But if you want the full list, just reach out and we can give you the specifics. But yeah, it's almost any SKU now, which is great.
Oh, no, there's nothing more really to add to that one. I mean, the only, I guess, thing that I think is useful to make people aware of is I'm not sure if anyone here uses the Microsoft Bing homepage at all, but there is a free Copilot for business. So I'm not sure if any of you are aware of the history behind sort of ChatGPT, but last year, someone from Samsung got themselves in very hot water because they actually pasted the source code for some of the Samsung Galaxy operating system into ChatGPT. Now, the problem with that is as soon as you paste anything into ChatGPT, it becomes public domain, which means that it's now outside of your control. What Microsoft have done is actually incorporated a version of ChatGPT into Bing. It's called Bing Chat. And basically that means you can actually work with that and it will actually hold your data to yourself. It's not releasing that data to the public domain. So
as long as you've signed in with that Enter ID, isn't it, Pat?
Correct.
So logged in with your work email.
Yeah, so as long as you log in with your work email, it's all your data is then all protected. So again, that's free for everyone, and it's in my opinion, a safer version of ChatGPT with the same functionality.
Definitely, good point. Because when you ask Copilot or Bing Copilot, it's not training the model itself. So the AI model that sits behind it, it's all protected. None of your chats are saved. And yeah, I would recommend if you're not already using that, use it immediately so that you're not using the regular ChatGPT online, because that could potentially compromise your data as a business as well. So yeah, it's a free product as Pat's mentioned. It doesn't work within your apps. That's what the Copilot, the Microsoft 365 gives you, but you get some basic search functionality.
Yeah. So just moving on, I'm just going to do a quick summary, then I'll open up to Q&A. We've got a couple of questions in the chat, but we'll also send out responses, written Q&A afterwards with the actual responses as well. So just in summary, Copilot is Microsoft's AI-powered assistant that works across the Microsoft 365 apps such as Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, Teams, etc. It's going to help you with a range of tasks, from writing emails and reports to creating those presentations and charts. It will also make you more efficient, so you can reduce time spent on mundane tasks. So let's try and actually stop you having to do those same repeatable tasks every week when we can use an AI to do that for you and allow you to do more of the fun stuff. From what we've seen, we've already seen a huge amount of engagement and interest in Copilot for M365. The people I've spoken to that are actively using it day to day are also really happy with the product, and many of them have said they couldn't go back to not having the product once they've had a taste of it. So, however, one of the key things to think about is before you start thinking about Copilot, think, is it right for you? So, as we've sort of mentioned throughout, Copilot isn't for every user in an organization. It's for people, generally content creators and management staff. For example, here we wouldn't give our tier 1 service desk Copilot licenses, they're not going to get the benefit from it. Equally, licenses, whilst we can add it on to, for example, a Microsoft 365 Business Basic license, you're not going to get the value from the product because you're missing a lot of the features that it wants to interact with. So whilst you can do that, it's probably not the right thing to do. Equally, a Business Basics, I think about £6 a month. Why are you buying a £24 add-on for a £6 a month license? It just doesn't make sense financially in that sense either. And lastly, the other key point to really sort of hammer in is that Copilot is using your existing security models. It won't suddenly give a user access to something they don't currently have access to. All it will do is make the data they do have access to more readily available and at your fingertips. So really does increase that productivity in searching. So just moving on to the Q&A. So the first question is are the features available on all M365 licenses? And can the users turn the features on themselves, or is it governed by administrator? So I think we've sort of covered this one, but just to give a direct answer, it's available for most licenses now. However, in my professional opinion, the licenses that are going to get most value from this are people with services such as a Microsoft 365 Business Premium or a Microsoft 365 E3 or E5. Others may get value, but you really need that full suite of products to get the most value from the product. And turning it on or off, it's very much a license. So once you purchase that license, you will assign it to a user in the Microsoft 365 admin portal. The user will then, within a couple of hours, get a welcome email, and it will just be available to them within their apps from then on. You can't give them the Word version and not the Excel piece. It's a package, and you get the whole package. Moving on, it's the next question was, can Copilot perform a universal search on your computer for information in your files? That's not really what Copilot's for. It will search throughout your Microsoft 365 tenant, so OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams, etc. It doesn't actually look at your local machine. It's very much focused on data that's in the Microsoft 365 platform or accessible.
But you can do that anyway via search in files and folders, or by your Windows search icon on the bottom left of your taskbar, or middle if you've got Windows 11. So yeah, you can kind of already do that feature if you need it.
And that's without a license. That's something that's already available to you. And lastly, the only other question I've seen come up is about the charity licensing. As Nick mentioned earlier, Microsoft don't currently have any plans for charity licensing for Microsoft Copilot at this point in time. Unfortunately,
it's a shame.
I
wish they did. That's not to say they won't, by the way. It's just not on the roadmap right at this minute. My previous job at Microsoft was working in the charities team as well. And when this was being talked about, we got an idea of the cost, and we were like, that's just going to not be particularly appealing for charities, because it is a massive cost, especially if you want to roll it out across multiple users. But I know, Pat, you've just mentioned the free version of Copilot, which is you can use to still create some content, just not within the Microsoft 365 apps. That might be some middle ground to maybe use, and at least you're protected as well. So yeah.
Brilliant.
I've just seen another question.
So I've seen a chat come up from, can it look inside the documents? Yes, it certainly can. So as long as your data is stored within the Microsoft 365 environment, Copilot will actually look inside the documents. It's not just looking at file names, it's looking at the names, the content of the document, and everything else. So one of the things in one of the videos earlier was PowerPoint. So we actually said create a PowerPoint based on the content of this Word document. So to do that, it's actually looking through that Word document, it's reading the data, it's understanding the data, and then turning that into a presentation for you. So yeah, it's very much looking at the content of those documents. It then also tailors the responses it gives you based upon other documents. So it actually learns you and your organization to actually help improve its responses it gives you. That data is not shared with other organizations. That's very much a personal thing to you as a company, but it is learning about you and storing that data in your own little bubble, so to speak. So it gives you the best results that are more applicable to you. I don't see any more questions at the moment, so I think with that in mind, I'm just going to hand back over to Tilly.
Brilliant, thanks both, and thank you all for joining. If you do have any other questions, please do reach out and we'll answer them to the best knowledge that we can, and I'll share those out. We will be sharing the recording after this, but if you do want to find out more about adopting Copilot in your business and discussing that readiness piece that Pat discussed in the webinar earlier, please do reach out to us on the contact details below. But you'll be hearing from me in probably about an hour's time anyway. So thank you all.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you, Tilly. And with that, I think we can wrap up. So yeah, again, thank you for everyone for joining. I don't know if you're going to make it available to the applicants, the attendees, but if they want the slides, I'm sure we can share them. There's nothing sensitive on there. Brilliant. Thanks all.
That's it. Thanks all.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Take care.